Good day, my guys. Oh, the beginning of the stream is always a bit difficult because you don't know exactly what to say. Um, I'm going to begin this way. Um, this week, or since last week, when we start streaming, I, I'm not really used to being on camera like this, even though my face isn't even present. Um, so in a certain way, I almost want to say I got a bit of a burnout. So what I decided to do for this stream instead of drawing stuff we would usually do for the channel, um, I figured I would go over some of more of a tutorial. As you can see on screen, this is the type of stuff I would what I want to go over today. I don't know if there's going to be enough time or if there's going to be time left, but I decided to do this because, or mainly because, with our intern that we have here, uh, I told him okay over the weekend I might do a video showing him specifically how to draw fabrics and cloths and how it works with gravity and pulling and all that. And I still needed to do that, but also with the bit of a burnout that I got, I kind of decided, you know what, we're going to hit two flies with one, or two birds with one stone, in the English version of the saying. But yeah, so I decided to rather do that video that I was supposed to make for him the weekend. I'm going to do it on stream. Also, this gives me a little bit of a break from our usual, let's say, regimen. So yeah, thanks. The TV is nice. Um I worked on it since yesterday after the stream ended. We decided that the stream looks a bit plain. The whole setup generally looks a bit plain. We wanted to upgrade it a bit, just to give it a better feel. So there is still, I think I did talk about this yesterday. Sorry, short-term memory loss. Um, we are still planning to upgrade the setup. The beginning is all very experimental, and we're checking what works and doesn't work. So yeah, this is just part of the experiment. If there's somewhat of a positive reception for it, we'll keep it. Maybe we'll upgrade it at some point. There is still some stuff we want to do. It's all just really depends on um, the time, because obviously we still have our own projects we need to work on for our YouTube channel. But there's short animation bits that we want to add to the stream and stuff like that. So yeah, let's get started with all this. I'm really not used to being a teacher. Um, yeah. So to go over it, it's the fabric physics that I mentioned. Just generally how shadows work, or how I usually work with shadows, because I think everyone has their, or not everyone, there is general rules, but some people tend to stray from the rules. But as I also said, most of the artists, comic books or manga or whatever you're into, cartoons, um, all that, they don't just thumb suck their drawings. Those drawings do come from a certain place, and it's because they have a certain understanding of how reality works. And reality has, it functions under a set of rules, and if you don't know what the rules are, how are you going to break it? That's just basically the setup of how things work. So there is somewhat of a learning curve, and art isn't a talent, it's a skill that needs to develop, and it's just practice. I know a lot of people say it's practice, 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 and it's not just practice, practice, practice. It's practice with learning. There's a certain form of studying that comes with it. Sorry, I have a habit of yapping and rambling when I start talking about something. After that, we're going to work with silhouettes, which is it almost falls in the same category as dynamic poses, but we're going to make dynamic poses its own thing, and the different types of art. It's not necessarily different types of art styles, but different ways of doing dynamic poses. It's kind of has a connotation with each other. But we probably can discuss different types of art, because here at EIE we do have a set art style, and that's not necessarily always good. A lot of artists, when you look at their work, they always draw mostly in their art style, but when you're not working for yourself, but you're in a company or in the industry, it is um, not necessarily inherent, but it's beneficial for you to be able to draw different art styles. So we can maybe go over that if there's time left, but just to begin with the fabric physics, as I put it, because this is the really important part that I wanted to put emphasis on, because this is what I wanted to show our intern in the first place. Um, so I'm just gonna go over it. By the way, I don't know. I think in one of the streams I did show this, but I just want to show what I do, because we usually work in PNGs, so we don't use a background. So when I draw, because I use the blue a blue brush, because that's just generally how we do it for the sketch. We basically just do a sketch, and then after the sketch, we what in real life traditional art would be ink over the pencil art. We just um, fix the line art and make it pretty, if I can put it like that. We polish the work. So yeah, the reason most people use blue is so that they can differentiate the, sorry, my pronunciation isn't what it's supposed to be, but it's so that they can make out the sketch from the polished line work. So just to undo that, but because I don't really use this, and even if I do use this as a background, I can't really make out what I'm working on. So this first layer, I'll just take this brush, but it doesn't really matter what brush you use, as long as it works for you. And that's really something I'm going to hammer on in the future, is you need to um you like I previously said, there are a set of rules you need to follow, and you need to know the rules before you can break them. But at some point, when you get to the breaking the rules point, then you start creating your own rules. So when you work on your own art style, what is important is that the art style you work with is an art style that you find fun, um, and enjoyable, and what works for you. So basically, what I wanted to get at, I fill out this um, piece completely black, and I know some of you wouldn't do this. It's not part of your workflow. You're not comfortable with it. This just works better for me, um, and it's mainly I do this, and so I can draw with the blue over it, and it's just it works better for me. It's not necessarily for everyone, but if you see me doing this, this is the reason why I do this. This is just for me to make out the blue lines better. And usually I won't do it with a completely black background. What I would do is I make the background a bit more, I lower down the opacity. So with that said, let's get into drawing fabrics, or at least explaining the fabrics. Joy boy. So basically, I previously said when you draw anatomy, one of the best references you can use is your own body, like your hands, for example, like your face, for example. But when you draw Superman, the best example to use is Zane. Zane has an amazing physique. I usually let him stand here next to me and make him strip. So that yeah. So yeah, I use him as a reference. And I have a whip next to me, so if he moves I whip him. But yeah, you'll see in the future me and Zane is going to get it get at we're going to rip out each other's throats a lot. But it's just teasing. We're not really enemies. Or are we? Is it because he's brown? Well, maybe I shouldn't answer that one. No, the actual reason it isn't because he's brown. It's because um, I'm a poor bastard and I can't afford to bring lunch to work, and then he would purposefully eat his curry next to me. It's kind of like teasing me. I'm not bringing the curry. Zayn, you're bringing the curry. Because even now I can smell the curry. Uh, yeah. Uh, anyway, yeah, it's fun having banter with Z, but with Zayn, sorry. Uh, the only problem is you guys can't really hear what he's saying. You're already having a hard time hearing what I'm saying. Um, Earlier today we made a joke about me getting hearing aids, but I think this mic specifically maybe needs um some aids of its own. So now, so apparently I need to hold the mic to my face like this whenever I talk. Anyway, yeah, I need to hold the mic close to my face, but I don't want it to hold it too close to my face, otherwise I might knock it over with my elbow.
Yeah, Daniel, so we had to cancel you right now, so. Yeah, we also just fixing it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's sometimes dependent on which direction the mic is facing. So I think this will give you a better.
Oh, okay.
What's up, stream? How's it going? Where's the camera at? Oh, it's mostly eyes.
Yeah, it's mostly my hands. Yeah, sorry. Things kind of went its own direction at the moment. Anyway, anyhow, I said we're drawing a piece of cloth. In my head, I thought like maybe we're going to do a curtain.
Can I check something for you here?
Yes.
Sorry for the settings, guys.
No, I'm sure they'll understand.
Trying to make the sound better. Here we go. That should be much better now.
Okay, cool. We finally fixed the mic after X amount of streams. Okay, anyway. Yeah, let's finally talk about the curtain I was supposed to draw. Anyway, okay, let's just do it. Okay, so let me just get a rough outline of it. Generally with a curtain, for example, the way you open it or the way it hangs, it kind of have different sections, I almost want to say, folds. But this is just curtain. I'll show you other fabrics in a moment. And when you look at this, generally what happens is you get a bit of a curve at the bottom. And it's good to maybe not have them at the same level. Especially if you're looking down from an angle, because the way it looks now is us facing downwards. But this is just rough sketch also, because I'm not really putting that much effort into it. The proportions look really bad. But generally you get this type of vibe. And not all of the time it's just like straight from the top. And also it usually has a lot more, almost want to say wrinkles, creases is the correct word. Sorry again, my English. And with this, actually when you tend to draw it, because this is very simplified. Oh no. Sometimes what you get is you get a bit of this. And depending on how bad the curve is, you don't even necessarily always have to draw this bit. So you can get away with leaving it like this if the curve is a bit less intense. If that makes sense. And I usually, you will get this within curtains. It's never going to be just this. That's not always gonna be the case. Just as you're not gonna get creases that reaches to the top, you're not gonna get those types of creases all the time. Also, what will happen is the curtains, it will let's take it from this one, for example, where it doesn't reach the top. A lot of the time they will intersect, if I can put it like that, or they would kind of split from each other, if that makes any sense. Sorry, that's just some terminology I picked up from Dylan, if that makes any sense. So yeah, again, it's this my personal nitpick. I'm just gonna keep that angle. And sometimes also with curtains, but it doesn't really happen that often. Is you get a crease and it kind of takes a dip. It doesn't go all the way down. It kind of makes a U-turn here. And it's also not from the exact top, or usually not. It depends on the artwork and the curtain itself, the way it's being hanged or whatever. I think you can do it from the top, but sometimes we break the rules to make things look better. But this is just basically a curtain. And none of this will apply to anything else. This is just a curtain. You won't get the same rules applying to a skirt, for example. I'm just going to talk about general fabric that you would get on clothes. Drawing clothes, a lot of the creases depend on where the seams are and the way the character pose. Because me just standing in a T pose, my jacket is stitched. The seams follow the T pose. But if I move my arm a bit too high, it's going to pull here where the sleeve meets the body of the jacket. So this, instead of being a corner, it's going to pull on each other. So it would do something like this instead of just this. And that's something we have to keep in mind. And keeping that in mind, what would happen at the top? It's almost the complete opposite that would happen. So with this being the normal, this is how the top would look like normally with a T pose. If you were to bend your arm upwards, where at the bottom, where the sleeve meets the body of the jacket, it would curve like that. At the top, it would make a bunch of wrinkles or creases. Sorry. Again, translation thing. And sometimes just with the stitches in general, and I mean stitches, I don't mean seams, just stitches. What would happen is you would get a bunch of these little creases. Not even all of them are going to be the same size, but this generally happens when you try to stitch something. Let's stick to a sleeve, for example. You try to stitch a seam that's a little bit too small for the body of the shirt or whatever you're stitching it to. Then it will kind of pinch the rest of the fabric into a corner. So where it would usually just be like this, and I mean this is the gap in between, now it kind of have to wrinkle up. And this time I actually mean kind of like wrinkle. It needs to wrinkle up to fit with this one. So that's where this usually happens. But you usually get that at the end of the sleeve or at the bottom of the jacket, wherever the seams end. Because at the end of, again, I'm just going to keep with sleeve for argument's sake. You usually get it at the end of this point. Let's say for argument's example, here's a hand poking out, and I'm not going to put in too much effort into an example hand. This is just to create a mental image. Because what this basically is you have the general sleeve, and they just flip it upside down over. So you basically, you basically get something like this. Just want to check if the camera gets it. Yeah, they flip it over like this, and they stitch it at this point. So sometimes, if they don't get the right measurements and stuff, that same creases is going to happen at the part where it's stitched together. Now this is a neat trick I learned, and also this depends on gravity and which part of the body you're drawing. The front of the shirt, for example, or the back, they're going to look a bit the same, but also this depends on the pose. The pose plays a huge role in how the wrinkles or the creases are going to work. Damn it, I really just want to stick with wrinkles because my tongue is kind of chained to that. I know the correct word is creases, but my home language doesn't like being chained up. It's a very aggressive animal. So I was talking about poses of characters. Before I get to that, I'm going to explain this bit. It's just a fun thing I learned, and do not condemn me. I saw this on Pinterest. I know a lot of people complain about Pinterest being full of AI slop and stuff, and yes, maybe it is, but even though it has AI slop and stuff like that, there is some cool tips that's still genuine. The art mostly on Pinterest is AI, the art itself, but the general tips I don't think is AI. They still work in practically. If I compare them to reality and my own clothes, and when I look in the mirror, it still stays true. The example still stays true and it works. And basically what this specific example showed was 3 ways clothing generally wrinkle or crease, whatever. They talk about the X, Y, and Z creases, where basically, let's talk for the X, for example. Let's begin with them. The clothes would crease in this kind of manner. Then we just erase this bit in the middle, so you would get something like that. Just to create a better image, I'm going to shade this in for you from top bottom, so just a better mental understanding of what this actually is. So it would basically, let's not do that. That's just going to defeat the purpose of the thing. Sorry, I'm just gonna be a little. I'm gonna manhandle this X a bit and just to kind of make you understand where the shading is and where it isn't. I hope this creates a better mental image of what I'm trying to get at. Let's move a bit forward, not a bit, just forward, with the let's say Y at this moment. So it's basically the same, you just fill in around it. And it's going to be the same with the Z. This looks so much like the South African flag, it makes me uncomfortable. Sorry, why? I know you weren't meant to be manhandled, but today is a special day. We're doing a stream. And then you would get the Z. And actually, maybe I should do just a little sketch to put them in practice and give you a better idea of how they look, and not just some very sketchy shading. Because I also think at this point the shading doesn't look isn't very correct. But anyway, that's how the creases go, and generally it's not that smooth. It's very much pointy, or it tends to be, but I don't really think you can use this in practice. It does exist in certain parts of clothing, but Zane wants to say something.
No, I'm chilling. I'm vibing. You keep doing you.
Okay. So I think those X, Y's, and Z's would really more often happen on the pants than on the sleeves or the body. Maybe on the shirt, but the shirt, for the most part, they just generally pull down. I'm drawing this from a quarter view. So with the neck basically being here and the arms there. Sorry for the messed up proportions. The shirt basically with gravity, it pulls down on itself, and the lower it gets, the more it kind of creates a, not necessarily a formation, but it groups at the bottom. So it starts getting that kind of idea. Say for example, if your mom, the next time your mom does laundry and she hangs up the sheet on the washing line, you go take a look. What mostly happens is it does curve like this. That's just the way the gravity works, because it's pulling, the weight is mostly being pulled down from this center point. This is where it's at its heaviest. So with the cloth trying to fold in this direction from the sides, it's going to kind of group up at the bottom like that. It folds in over itself. What I actually can do for you is I think maybe I did pull this up yesterday, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a reference, not necessarily a reference, but a pose I did of Dylan yesterday. I finished it today. And may I ask why the pose is so big? This is not the perfect example, but it's just to give a general idea of how the clothes fold in on itself. Yeah, right at the top. This is actually a mistake. This isn't supposed to be. Oh, damn it. Let me just create other layers so I can work over this. This is actually a bit of a mistake. I think it should have been more like this, as with this bottom one, where it starts creasing here at the bottom. I did draw the shirts. A lot of the time, what happens, again, this is specifically with the sleeves, and because it's the T pose, when you let down your arms, it kind of creases here at the bottom, but it depends on what you're wearing. So with this shit that I drew for him, it kind of in the armpits, it creased a bit. But that wouldn't necessarily be the only place it would crease. If you take, for example, again the sleeve, but not long sleeve. This, imagine just a t-shirt. If you lift up your arm a lot, you are going to see it's going to pull here at the bicep. So this piece would be longer at the bottom, because if you look at this in this position, if you it still stays stays in that position, this circular position. Let me just draw it as a better example. So in the T pose, you'll have this normally, but when you lift your arm upwards, that circle still stays that same circular position. It doesn't tilt anyway. So if your arm is lifted up, it still stays like that, but it's being pulled at the bottom and stretched at the top. So again, not only will this piece of the sleeve stay the same, but where it's stitched together to the body of the jacket is also going to stay the same. So it's going to be stretched here at this point, where if there are any creases, it's going to be not necessarily small or less, but it will be a lot more tight and not scrunch on top of each other. It's going to be more of a tight pull, where at the bottom here it would group again. There would be a lot of them. So that's just an example for that. Again, it's not necessarily the opposite for downwards. Downwards it's much more lax, but it does tend to pinch here at the bottom of the armpit. This would also be a case of it kind of hanging like with the shirt. I don't really know why the hell I went so hard on the creases in the shirt, in the sleeve. I don't know why I did that, but it's done. I can't really fix it now. So yeah, I think one of the reasons I did actually do it was because the sleeve is so extremely loose. The shirt looks a bit oversized for Dylan in this image, so that's maybe a possibility. Like sometimes I forget my own mindset when I went back and draw this stuff. What you think now is possibly not what you're going to think tomorrow. It's that's just the way stuff goes. Yeah, that's generally with clothes, but look at larger pieces of cloth. We talked about the X, Y, and the Z, and I think here even on my jacket that I'm wearing now, the sleeves, you can see better examples of that. Let me actually try and draw this. So you will get bits and pieces like this that folds in like that, or the X's that we talked about, the X, Y, and getting to the Z. I hope you can see that, and you can see it's the X, Y, and Z from this position, but from close up, I mean, it kind of looks natural. What I tend to do is what I usually tend to do is with these types of pieces of clothing, and I think this is kind of a bad habit on my part. I probably shouldn't do this, but I imagine myself two pieces of, or two creases very close to each other, and it kind of going inwards like this. This is actually what I did here with Dylan. This piece of creases, I did it with this one. And instead of putting this extra piece in here because I thought it was funny, not actually, it's just like, again, it's an Afrikaans term. When you say somebody thinks they're funny, it's they think they're a smart word that I'm not allowed to say. Maybe just lift it up a bit there. And then I also got pieces like this, but instead of making it look like mountain tops that's vertically placed, what I rather should have done is just make it smoothly creased like that. I don't know how well you can see that, but basically just this. And not go so hard on that line. What I could have done instead was maybe put in 2 lines to show that this is 2 separate creases. Where then if I went in with the shading, I would have, let's say for example the shading is coming from the top, I would have shaded that piece and this piece. Again, this is the part where you kind of know what you're doing, but then when you think again about it, maybe not exactly. Where if I think about the shading coming from the top, this huge piece of cloth here, it would kind of overshadow this little piece, and it kind of the shadow fall more over it like that. But the reason I didn't do it now is because I wanted to create a more clear image of what I mean with this type of creases. Although again, if creases tend to fold over each other, with the arm, for example, here you can see. Oh, let me just. I hope you can see. It does pinch here. It tends to pinch. So when you draw that, I'm not good at foreshortening, but I'm gonna try it. When you're wearing a long sleeve jacket and you bend your arm and the cloth pinch at the bend, at where the arm bends. Sorry, I know some anatomical terms, but not all of them. You kind of do get something like this, where the cloth lifts up at this bit and this bit, but then this piece that looks like a boomerang, it basically, what is happening is it's this effect, but from this view. So what you're looking at is this piece of cloth and this one that's standing extra bit out. So what you're seeing is this piece is basically this, and that piece is this one. And again, with this pointing downwards is basically, I almost want to say taco shaped. Please don't laugh at me, I'm trying to do my best. I think in the future, again, if you have any questions, you can just ask me.
Just don't ask him. It's fine.
Zane is being mean to me. In the future, if you have any questions again, whether it be in the chat or you're watching this from our YouTube channel, E.I.E Crew, you can ask any question and I will answer it in the next chat, or I might answer it in the comment section, depending on how complicated the question is or how complicated the explanation would be. If it's something simple, I would answer it maybe even within one sentence. But if it's going to be a whole explanation like this one, I'm just going to do it on the next stream. But I think with that said, we're going to move on to shadows, and I did do a bit of them. When you do shadows, and I'm basically just talking to the beginner artists at the moment, the novices. The more experienced people, the veteran artists, they don't actually have to watch the stream. They know what I'm talking about. But easy tip, draw yourself a little small sun. From a moment. This is just for your understanding of where the light is coming from. So when I draw a sphere, I understand that because the sun is coming from the top, there isn't going to be any shading here. There's not going to be any shading here. Because when it comes from this direction, it kind of embraces that bit. But because it's also a sphere, it's also to go over that bit. So the only piece that's going to be dark is the bit behind. But that's just a sphere. That's simple. It's like a cube, for example, now. And this is depending, I drew a sun. But is the sun coming from the back or the front? For example, if it's coming from the front, this side is generally not going to get that much shadow. It's not going to get any shadow at all, in my opinion. But also with this sun coming from this direction, these two pieces also aren't really going to get any much shadow. This one might still, because now I'm talking also, you won't get any, because again the sun is coming from this direction, so it's going to land on this bit and this bit. But if we make it so that let's make it so that I can actually pick the brush I want. Let me just fix this because I have the habit of drawing on the wrong layer, and I apologize for that. Let's just redraw a sun. On our cube. The sun is in front of the cube, but it's coming from this direction. That happening, this side of the cube is facing against the sun. So the sun is in front of the cube, but because it's this direction, it's almost, imagine something like that. This part of the cube is going to get a bit more shadow. If the sun were in the back of the cube, here for example, this piece isn't going to get any shadow, this piece here. But this one is going to get shadow, and this will get shadow. Again, if the sun were from the other side, this side, these three pieces aren't going to get any shadow. But if the sun was from the back, sorry, if the sun was from the back and it's this side on the top is not going to get any shadow, but the back is. is basically you need to understand from which direction the sun is coming and how the shape of the object is going to react to the sun. Even when you draw the shadows of something. Again, let's just take away this. Imagine this one is coming from the back. What is going to happen is, let me just for example draw the sun here. Yesterday I did explain perspective. If you don't know what perspective is basically you have two perspective lines and I want to draw a cube. I'm going to use this line or this point to create the one side of the cube, and I'm going to do the same with this one to create the other side of the cube. Now with that same principle in mind, we're going to use that with the shading. Now I think it's much easier to just erase it than to undo it. So with the sun here, we're going to make sure it hits that point. For example, it hits the floor there. It hits that point, hits the floor there. Hits that point, hits the floor there. And it hits there. Move it downwards here. It hits there. Move downward here. Then we just shade that. And there we have the shadow of our box or cube. And this principle is going to be true for any other object you're drawing. It would be true for the sphere. It would be true for a character that you're drawing. It will apply to everything concerning shape. Yeah, and that's also, I tried to apply that when I drew the creases of the X, Y, and Z jacket. But again, I ran a bit into the problem. You can do realistic shading, but sometimes when you do something realistic, it messes with the eye a bit. Again, yesterday I talked about the Romans, and they built the temple of Athena, I think. They built the temple of Athena, and they used the correct measurements to build the pillars. But what ended up happening, because the human brain is weird, even though they used the correct measurements, the temple didn't look even. And because of that, they purposefully didn't use the correct measurements for all the pillars, just so that the temple can look even. And strangely enough, it did look even though all the pillars were skew and stuff. So I'm not really sure how that's supposed to work, but it does. And just the last thing before we move on to the next thing, when it comes to shading, there's different shadings, different forms of them. I see a lot of artists. Some of it is stylized. Again, I'm just using a cube. For example, what some artists do is they use, I'm not sure what the correct terminology is for this, but just for argument's sake, we call it hard and soft shading. Some of them use just hard shading, and some of them use just soft shading. I actually think a sphere would be a better example of this. Again, with the sun coming from this direction, where hard shading basically consists of just a pure block of black, and soft shading is when you have that pure block of black, pure piece of black, but you blend it in
No.
So you blend it in, and I see a lot of novice artists do this when they use the soft shadow where they blend it in. But speaking reality wise, how it works, if you want to do realistic type of stuff, you have both of these in real life. And it really depends, again, this depends on where the lighting has come from, how close it is, and how hard it is. Where I think smooth shading, imagine this is cylindrical. If the shading comes from below, the lighting is from above. This damn tablet. Yes, see? The lighting is from... Why is it being difficult? Let's say the lighting is coming from above. And you have your shading here. You'd most likely have soft shading, because there isn't any hard surfaces that's falling onto the cylinder. But when I have, let me just blend it in so that we can get a better example of this. Sorry, I hope you can actually see what I'm doing. Sometimes what I'm seeing is not exactly what you're seeing. Where, for example, maybe there's an object here, and because of the lighting coming down, I'm not going to shade this object. It's just to show how it would reflect on the sphere. It would kind of make a hard surface. And the reason for that being is because with the shading, not the shading, the lighting coming down, this shape falls onto the sphere, and it's not just the shading that doesn't really it doesn't come from a certain space. It's just coming from down below. It's not being reflected from any other object. So basically what I'm getting at is, if it's a object that's in a certain form that's more round, wherever there's shading involved, lighting involved, the shading part of that spherical form would most likely be soft shading. Well, if this there's a object in front of it that blocks the lighting, the shading that would come from that object would most likely be hard shading onto the object, because it's blocking the direct light that's going to fall onto that spherical object. Also, just something you need to take into account, that the shading takes the form of the object. A lot of times that happens. So when you draw a character, this is horrific. Sorry, this is horrific proportions and character design. When we draw characters and we shade them, we don't just look at the shading coming from this direction, or I usually draw it from the opposite direction, but for example's sake, from this direction, and we think, okay, so it's going to, the nose is going to block that side of the lighting, so this side of the nose is just going to be complete black. That's not going to be the case here. What is going to happen, and I mean when you draw realistic characters, this point of the nose, it curves. So this would most likely turn into soft shading, this bit. And only from this point on, it's going to be actually dark. But here, it's going to be soft shading. If the sunlight was coming from this direction, then yeah, most likely this bit, because the eye does fall into kind of a dip, I almost want to say, this bit is going to be hard shading. So that's just something to keep in mind. Forms and direction of lighting does play a huge role in shading and stuff. So moving on to the next thing, I just realized I didn't put on the background music. I'm sorry guys, I apologize. You must have been so bored, it probably sounded like a class lecture, which kind of basically it is. So oh yeah, next we were talking about silhouettes. Now we're getting into character design and concept art. When designing a character, and this is again what we learned in second year of my study in 3D animation, when you're designing a character, the character, if you just take the silhouette of the character, like this statue here, this beautiful statue, if you just saw the silhouette of this, you should immediately know what you're looking at or what character you're looking at. The shape of the character needs to be iconic. When you take Mickey Mouse, for example, if I do this, you kind of know that's a mouse. You kind of get the idea that's Mickey Mouse. And that's basically just the silhouette of it. That's Mickey Mouse. So that's just one example. SpongeBob or Mr. Krabs, Plankton, those are going to be the same. Goofy, Donald Duck. All of those characters fall under that rule. And that's generally a positive rule. That's what you want when you're designing characters. And I even discussed this with our intern the other day. So that's just an important rule to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff. Now also, this is why I said this is also going to fall a bit into dynamic poses. I'm not going to hang too long on silhouettes. There's not too much to say about it. But when you draw silhouettes of a character, when you draw a character, keep in mind the silhouette. And when you draw the poses of the character, you need to understand that you need to draw the pose in such a way that when you look at the character, you can make out what pose the character is standing in. Again, I'm going to bring up this pose that I did for Dylan, because this is a kind of a good example of what not to do. But unfortunately, this was a case of it was a circumstance that this happened. So this is semi-wrong, semi-right. If you take the silhouette of this and you look at the right arm, you can see, well, this is a gesture the arm is making, but you can't make out what the left arm is doing. What should have happened is the pose should have been drawn in a way where the left hand, even a bit, even if it's just the thumb, should have stood out here, this piece. So this was just a horrendous mistake I did. Well, actually, I'm just going to explain what happened. So I'm doing the reposes of, I'm redoing the poses of the avatars I created for the team, and I gave this specific one for the intern, but Zane, you guys aren't hearing this, but I can hear all the commentary he makes at the back. This guy is verbally bullying me. The dude is socially destroying me. Anyway, I asked him to redo the pose, and he drew it a bit too small. And when I wanted to resize it into its proper form or proper size it needed to be, the hand didn't fit into the frame, so I had to redraw the hand or redo the pose in a situation where the hand was in frame, but the way the drawing was that I couldn't fit the hand into a proper silhouette, and this is basically what I got stuck with. But it's not the fault of anyone, it's just circumstance. But yeah, still, I think he did a good job with the pose that I asked him to redo. It's just unfortunate that the size was a bit of a problem and the scaling didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So, as I said, that's something to keep in mind when you draw silhouettes and poses. With just taking the silhouette, you need to understand which character you're looking at, and you need to understand what pose they're doing. And talking about poses, I think that's the next one. Dynamic poses. Let's just start with poses and then we go on to dynamic poses. So generally with poses, as I previously said, when you use the silhouette, you need to understand what pose the character is using. But poses also kind of need to show body language. So usually when people do concept designs or character designs and they draw the characters in poses, they would draw the character in a pose where the body language can be conveyed. And I mean, you don't have to be really a professor in this. People understand body language subconsciously, and some of them body language is also something you can study it, you will understand it better. Certain stuff you just do unconsciously, certain stuff we understand unconsciously, but that's just because we as a human species are social creatures. These ideas are planted in our brains, and some stuff are just too subtle for us to directly understand. That's why there's studies done of it, and why some people can read other people just better because they had a better understanding of body language. But again, coming back to the poses, you draw it in a certain body language. It's kind of like when you draw a face, where we understand. Me personally, I understand if my brush doesn't work, I get mad. But sorry.
Educating us, yeah.
Now I'm just gonna use the mouse instead.
The mouse?
Yep, the mouse. Let's just pick out a brush that can actually work. Actually, okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe if I change the opacity, I can actually see what I'm drawing. Anyway, when we draw a face, using just these different expressions, just change a few lines or whatever, we can make out the emotion that's being conveyed. Like this guy, for example, he's got some nefarious plans. This is basically how Zane looks on a daily basis. But yeah. So the same goes for body language. The way people present themselves generally speak about themselves. For example, I don't know how many people know this. For me, example, I think this is pretty much a general thing. When you cross your arms like this, it basically just means you're blocking yourself off from a person you feel uncomfortable in a situation. Usually when you point your feet away from someone, it means you don't really want to be in their vicinity. You're uncomfortable being in that area. You want to walk away. But if your feet is directing to the character, yeah. Dude, I'm so sorry I didn't see your comments. Jonas McGee. Yes, I am just aura farming. I'm not drawing anything today. I'm just doing a tutorial. So, yeah, it's just a tutorial today. I hit a bit of a... I was going to say a bit of a burnout. So, just to reset my mind, tomorrow I'll do a proper stream again. But today is just a lesson. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind with poses. And now me actually coming back to dynamic poses. Again, this is something we learned in our second year, and it's something I myself ain't that good at yet. So basically, you practice this. If you draw a random line, a very smooth line, and then you basically try to use that to create a pose for a character. For some reason, I think this looks like a ballerina that broke her back. Or maybe the head is here, and the body here, and the leg goes down and the arm forming here. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do with this arm. Maybe something like this. And the other leg like that. See, I'm not good with this yet. I suck at this. I understand the principle, but in practice I can't do it. But it's just good practice for any artist that wants to go into character design or concept art. That's just general good analysis practice. Actually, I'm gonna show you something. I flippin' suck so much at this. I have a book about it. Book I can study. But I still can't do it. It's an entire book full of these images. I don't actually want to show the images because not all of them are PG friendly. Like, what's that dude? I forgot his name. When usually when he pops up in a video game ad or in a movie ad, then at the end he would say like PG-18, PG-13. I need that with this book. It's a R-rated book. Anyway, that's just good practice for dynamic poses. Also, this is something to keep in mind. This is something I recently learned. And I'm actually disappointed in myself that I only recently learned this. Draw a straight line down. This is if you draw a character in a pose. And I just mean a general pose, not a top-down pose or anything like that. This is just to find the center of balance for the character. Because if you draw a character just standing like this, this guy looks high as a kite. He doesn't really have a sense of balance. What is going to happen is he's going to fall. And unless he uses his foot to counterbalance, he's going to fall hard. Where if you have this line and a character just standing here, you can kind of see this foot balances the entire character. Again, just it doesn't even have to be where the dude is stepping. It just needs to be the center of the character's mass straight downwards. But that's just principles of good character design. Or not character design necessarily, but good poses. Now let's see what's next on the list, because my short-term memory just kicked in. Yeah, the different types of art. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this. This isn't, I mean, different mediums or different types of styles necessarily. I wanted to bring this up because especially for newer artists. Again, this is a discussion I had with our intern yesterday. You get good at what you practice. And not everyone practice the same thing. Actually, a lot of people practice just one thing. For example, me practicing a lot of character art and design. I can't do backgrounds and I can't do creature designs. If you ask me to do that, I'm going to fail miserably. But there's people out there that specialize in that. That's their passion projects. They love doing it, and that's their passion, that's their talent, that's their skill. For example, I have a friend of mine. She is an amazing creature artist. She's very good at drawing creatures. I can't do that at all. But she's really good at it, and at this point she's starting to get good at environments also. But point is, she draws a lot, and she basically draws every day. And it comes down to the principle, the more you practice something, the better you get at it. And unfortunately, not everyone practice everything, and it is a rare case when you get that. Because if you ask her to do character design or just drawing any humanoid thing, she is kind of going to fail. She can draw what would be the correct word? Stuff that walks on 4 legs and birdies. She can draw that types of stuff very good. But again, me trying that, I'll probably make a Muppet out of myself when I do that. But that's just the different types of arts I wanted to talk about today. So there is time left, about an hour, and I did promise you guys that if there is time left, we can talk about different styles. Not what I was talking about now, but actual different styles in art. So again, it comes down to the rule that there is a lot, and I mean a lot of different artist styles of drawing stuff. But it all comes down to the fact that they did study art, and they know what they're doing. They know how lighting works. They know how anatomy works. But you need, in order to break the rules, you need to know the rules. That's what it basically comes down to. And when we draw, when we design characters or do something in a new art, and I actually implore you to do this as new artists, go and look at different artists and their work and try to understand the rules that they broke and why they broke it. Because for me, I recently started drawing this new art style, and I'm going to draw it now, and then afterwards I'll explain the reasons behind the way I drew it. The way I drew it. And again, this is like a really rough sketch. This is not very accurate. This is actually horrific. No, screw this. I'm not gonna shoot myself in the foot like this. Listen, also, this is something I really need to talk about. This method that I'm using now, this thing, I do not recommend it. Again, do what works for you. This works for me. This is why I'm using it. But this is not a recommended way of learning to draw faces or using guidelines. Not at all. You can go look at other YouTube tutorials and stuff. Most of them will use this type of guideline. And I promise you, if they use that, don't follow their tutorials, because they're going to lead you down a path that's going to hinder your art development. There is other method that's used, and the reason I don't use that method yet is because I'm not really versed in it. And it's basically, they draw a face of a monkey. Yes, a monkey. But it's basically just kind of like a mask. And again, I can't draw a monkey's face, so I'm not really good at this. So I draw a monkey's face, pretend that's a monkey's face, and they use that reference to draw a human's face, because apparently we look like monkeys. So yeah, I don't like being called a monkey, but that's the way the world works. So yeah, I'm going to use this for the character I'm drawing now. And again, like I said, this is just for example. I don't expect it to be all that good. Sorry, I'm just going to be silent. Just focusing a bit on this drawing. Again, I'm not putting too much effort into this specific drawing, but it's just to show you guys this is really thumb sucking. This is not the actual character that exists, or because the reason I chose this style was let me just finish that. Okay, the reason I chose this style to do for certain projects is because in my free time now I want to try and do a comic. But the reason I chose or developed this style, I'll say develop because I haven't seen anybody else do this style yet, is because I wanted to draw something that's quick and easy, because a single chapter is going to take about 90 drawings. Yes, 90. More or less, it's going to take 90 drawings. So I need to draw something it's quick to draw. For me personally, it needs to be fun to draw, and it needs to be pleasant to look at. Now, this is actually a quite difficult match for me, because you can get something that's easy to draw and fun to draw, but not necessarily pleasant. And like you can get a basic matchup of all of them, and you get something that's fun to look at and easy to draw, but it's not necessarily fun to draw for you. And actually, one of the things I struggled most with was the nose and the eyes specifically, because when I draw eyes, I like doing this round shape. But then again, there is other art styles is also fun for me to draw, but this specifically I like. So that's why I kind of make the owl, no, not the owl, the eye rounded a bit here. And the art style isn't, I would say, fully developed because it's something I'm still working on. So maybe in the future it might be a little bit more to the top. But I think for now it works good, more towards the bottom. Again, I like drawing rounded things. Sharp objects or not sharp, but very straight lines. I like that also. When I usually draw ears of more realistic characters, I tend to draw it in a form that almost looks like this. And on its own, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm just going to put it on this character and maybe it's going to make more sense to you. I don't, if I weren't drawing this character for fun, I would have drawn the ear more in a manner that looked like this. And it still looks good and stuff, but me having to do this 90 times in a single chapter is not going to be fun for me. It's going to be tedious and monotonous. And that's the reason why I had to find an art style that's it's not going to turn into a form of masochism for me to draw, because I have different art styles and some of them are really good and some of them are very cartoonish, but it's not necessarily easy to draw. The more realistic ones take time, and I don't have that much time to work on these stuff. And I make a lot of mistakes when I draw them. Every artist makes mistakes, but those mistakes cost time. So I needed to find something that was more quick to draw, and that's where I hit the problem of I can draw stuff really quick, but it doesn't look that good. Then I found something that kind of looked good, but then the problem was it wasn't fun for me to draw because it didn't have all that elements that I like. And what I like is these straight lines and curves, which they kind of contradict each other, but it kind of depends on where you put them. So I decided for the face, generally straight lines. With a face from this angle, you would normally get kind of a dip, with the eye sitting next to the dip. But again, I want to do something fast and easy, so I use that. And again, the reason I'm specifically talking about this own art style that I'm developing, it's not me trying to talk about my own stuff now. Well, maybe it is a bit. I like bragging. We're all humans, we all have our mistakes. One of my sins is bragging a lot. Do not tell your friends about that. They might not want to look at my stream anymore. But yeah, basically, this is the art style that I like. This just works for me. It's practical for me. It's not going to be practical for anybody else, because this is something I developed. It's easy for me to draw and it's quick to draw. It's not going to be quick for anybody else to draw that just saw this image and decided, you know, I wanted to draw this. Somebody else is going to have to maybe trace this image just to kind of understand the proportions. But for me, it comes naturally because I just flip it through it. Like, you get a lot of complicated art styles and then a lot of simple ones. One of the simplest ones that I actually find enjoyable, and you can actually use this when you draw more realistic characters. Again, I'm just going to use this method because it works for me. Don't you use it, because it's going to hinder your growth in art. You know, I'm really tempted to close that door, but maybe they'll get mad at me. So, yeah, don't do this. Use the monkey method. I can't properly show the monkey method because I can't properly do it. But just go on YouTube and look for it or Google it. You'll probably find it somewhere out there. Al wat hulle hoor is 'n geflikkel. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear anything. It was just I kind of I kind of stripped myself at Dylan and Dewald and Zayn for making such a noise. Anyway, I was talking about the art styles. One I like is that's a bit much. The characters generally have a round head, and they don't draw the jawline. The neck just kind of starts here. I know it's not the cyanide and happiness kind of characters. Then I would have an eye here, and basically the eyes are flat out round. It's flat out round, but because you're looking from a certain angle, and the head being a sphere, it's going to be a bit squashed. And you'll see this eye being round. I think that's a extremely fun art style. Again, I like circles. Also, this is going to look fun, but just give it this type of smile. I love that. I love that art style. There is some people that do that. Go on Pinterest, you will find them eventually. I think Tankles had a similar type of art style with one of their projects, but a lot of their art kind of looked like the Gorillas art. But then again, you get people that kind of look like the art style I showed you a minute ago, with kind of more of a squarish face. It's kind of like the round, but it does that dip where it's not necessarily what we refer to as the bean face. The bean face is when we talk about the bean face, we talk about characters like Steven Universe, for example, where the face is basically straight down, but where the cheek begins, you get this dip, and this is what we mean with the bean face, because their face kind of turns into this bean thing. Sorry, this is a horrific image. Again, usually in cartoons and in animation, you don't really get to see the front view of the face. It's usually just quarter view and side view. I think that's just cheating. Not cheating necessarily, but within dialogue, you just have the two characters in this kind of position and mirrored talking to each other, and that's not necessarily ever really a problem. Thank you. I know I can draw a good circle. I love circles, but unfortunately I have to move from the circles to the face now. the other art style. There is actually one that I do like. They don't use circles at all, and this is not necessarily the type of eyes that I like, but they do it really well. If I knew the artist's name, I would have given them a shout out at this point, but unfortunately I don't know their name. I just saw the work on Pinterest. Where the eyes, that kind of sucks. Really messed that up. Again, when you draw a quarter view, the eye that's closer to the outside of the face usually gets squashed a bit. So they basically just draw eyes like this, but I did notice that it's more squished at the top and it branch out at the bottom. So in anime a lot you do get these types of eyes. these types of eyes a lot, but it's more, they use it in an expressive way when it's, I think, kind of sarcasm. Oh, they call it T eyes. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks, man. I didn't know that. Oh, you don't have any idea. Don't worry, me neither. But anyway, this was just an interesting style I thought of. You just guessed. Well, I can tell you something. During this entire stream, there was a bunch of actual terms. The terms does exist for certain matters, but I just don't know the terms, so I thought of other terms that can substitute them, just to carry over the message and so that people can understand what I'm talking about, just for argument's sake. So it doesn't really matter. As long as people understand what message you're trying to convey, I don't really think within conversation it matters that much. But yeah, they basically use the, and I like what you said. I like what you said with the T-shaped eyes. I think I'm gonna keep that. So with the T-shaped eyes, this artist did it really well, I believe. But I think the character that I saw usually wore a hat, but the face is generally it's round, but it takes more of a square shape. And again, they don't draw the jawline, so the neck basically goes straight down. If they want to take or put more effort into the drawing itself, and I think they did do it, but I just can't remember, they would put some sort of shading underneath here to create the image of the jawline. Or not the image of the jawline, just the, what would be the correct word? My English is failing me. The illusion of a jawline, that's the correct word.
Don't worry, we'll keep quiet.
Thank you.
Sorry for making noise. Sorry.
You better apologize.
For what?
For making noise, man.
We were talking about.
Definitely not. You weren't talking about work. I'll bet $100 on that.
Alright, give me a
Prove it. Exactly, to the shame corner. Not me, him. They need to go to the shame corner. Huh? See, he's turning that into some racist nonsense again. Saying you're racist against yourself. Yeah, but let's actually get back. Let's actually get back to the subject and the matter, which was the different types of art styles, and why people use it. Again, why I'm talking about this. Yes, this girl know what she's talking about. Then you're cancelled. I like her a lot. She's awesome. Anyway, the reason I brought up art styles with the extra time I had was so that we can basically dissect the reason people do it, and why everyone don't just draw realistic stuff, and not just the reason they do it, but why they do it the way they do it. And again, this is why I also said you can go ahead and study other artists' work and try to understand why they try to cut the corners that they cut. The bean face thing, I can understand. It's easy. You'll see a lot in 2D animation that the drawings aren't really that's complicated, I want to say. It's mostly because they try to keep it simple so that it's easier to animate. Because for the people that don't know, I studied animation. I have a diploma in it. In a single second, you need to draw, if this is just average, industry standard, you draw 24 frames. Frames referring to images. You draw 24 frames per second. So sometimes that gets a little bit annoying. So they try to simplify the characters so that the process is easier for them to go through, and it's generally less expensive. So that's, I think, where the bean face came from. It's not really a complicated art style. So yeah, that's why Western animation usually have simplified characters. When it comes to anime and stuff like that, it's also a bit of a, the reason it's more easy for them is their animation, the art style is a bit of a copy and paste. You can literally take a male and a female character and change and just swap their hairs, and they're going to look exactly the same. Oh, and the eyelashes, probably the eyelashes plays a huge role in those characters. Well, there are some art styles that's an exception, and I applaud those art styles. But then again, I don't think those mainly stay in manga. They don't get developed into animation because some of those drawings get so complicated, man. And again, it's like when you draw a comic, you imagine a single page has a minimum of, for argument's sake, 5 drawings.
7 drawings.
7 drawings. Okay, 7 drawings.
7. Nice.
So a minimum of 7 drawings. Dude, I'm gonna keep it at 7 drawings. Otherwise, if you keep changing the number, everybody's going to get confused. We keep it at 7 drawings a page, and then you have to have this is 18 pages more or less for the, so 7 times 18 is a lot of numbers, and I can't do math in my head. That's Zane's job. So yeah, it's a lot of drawings, and some of those artists really go into it, and they do amazing art, and I have a lot of respect for them because they need to pump out that amount of drawings within a week or 2 weeks, and then they want to boost up the quality that high. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And if you don't really stand out within the industry, like say for example Berserk, I don't know how many people know Berserk. If you are not 18 years old or older, forget that name, stay away from that book. I promise you it's not gonna be good for you. But anyway, that dude's art style stood out so much from the rest of them that he can basically take a few months off. Like he releases a chapter, I think 3 or 4 times a year. So art takes time, and we sometimes need to take shortcuts to pump out as much content as we need to. So I kind of went on a rant, and I just went off that for a moment. What I was trying to get at is when, I did say this at least 2 times now beforehand. The reason you need to understand how to draw realistic characters and how anatomy work, because you can't break the rules without knowing the rules. I'm really hammering on that one. And this is why I say study other artists and try to figure out why they break the rules that they break. And mostly it's for just production costs and stuff like that, and to save time. but you can't really. What's the point of it if you're not going to have if you're not going to have fun drawing? Then it just completely defeats the point. But when you draw a character like this, for example, the round eye thing that I showed earlier,
Probably gonna have to be on a newer task.
they draw this kind of like straight down neck. They avoid the jawline, but what they do instead is they give this kind of shading at some point. I'm really messing this up. Maybe I don't really. I forgot where the shading kind of started. I think it's kind of here, maybe. But it basically just creates the idea of a jawline. So you, as the student, I almost want to say, you need to go look at these drawings, and now you need to understand why is this shading specifically here. And you study this and you realize, oh, this shading is here because they needed to create the illusion of neckline. Something that's really interesting to study is noses. And I don't know, specifically anime noses. Because a nose in reality, this is just a fun trick that you guys can implement. Usually from a quarter view, which is basically not completely a front view or side view, but something in between. We call that a quarter view. From a quarter view, the eyebrow here kind of sort of connects to the nose. But also, just this is a bit of a more realistic drawing. You kind of need to or want to keep this bit open and not completely close it. Again, this depends from person to person, because some people have longer noses and some people have more flat noses, but everybody tends to have a nose where this skin kind of pulls from the nose and attaches to just before the cheek happens. But again, if you have a nose that is a bit more longer or bigger, that this gap is going to be a little bit closer, but it generally still stays that way. I actually put it on the wrong place, more so here. to hell with noses. Exactly, that's what I'm going to get at with this. This is where I'm going. But I need to explain to you why they say go to hell with noses and why they do it the way that they do it. This is what I'm getting at. Again, this is nostril and this is the other side of the nose. This is basically how noses would go. So what, and I'm going to use the anime for example, because as you say, to hell with noses. Look at some anime, some of them basically just put a dot there. That's just to create the illusion of the point of the nose, this point. And your brains have a weird way of filling out details themselves. So you basically already understand, whoa, this is a nose. Basically just because it's in the middle of the face. That's one of the reasons they do it. Other thing they do is they create this weird looking thing. The reason they create this one specifically, and they usually color this in, is for the same reason they create this dot. Is you can make out this is kind of a nose, because they didn't draw the nose, they drew the shading that the nose would throw. If the lighting comes from this way, they draw the nose this direction. If the lighting came from the other way, they would draw the nose this way. It's basically to create the illusion of there's something that's throwing shading, so there has to be a nose. That's why they do that. You can actually look at Dragon Ball. Theirs is a little bit more developed. They have something that kind of looks like this, if I'm not mistaken. Some anime like Naruto, for example, they're a bit lazy. But again, understandable production costs or cuts. They basically just make two lines next to each other and they fill in a little shadow like this. Again, that's just to create the illusion of a nose, because they use shadows a lot to make people think there's something of depth. And I know what they usually do is they also, with the eyebrows that they draw, Again, this is why I mentioned this line. They draw this also, usually just on one side. They draw this also to create that image of, oh, there's a nose going down there. But this is the next one I'm going to show. The Naruto one is actually one I use a lot, but the next one I'm going to show takes a lot of inspiration from the stop one, and it's one of the most easiest to copy. Is, as you can see, the point of the nose and the other side of the nostril pointing out that way. So what they would do, instead of drawing the other nostril, they would draw the nose. I'm talking about that's just that line that I drew here. That's basically this. Then they would fill in the point of the nose, and because of the nostril, it takes extra time to draw. They would just actually make it a little bit bigger. So actually, no, I'm talking nonsense. This bit is supposed to be that bit. Let me just erase this so it looks better. I'm actually going to fill it on the actual nose to actually get a better understanding. So they fill in that gap and just color it in. So what you get is this. And this is the tip of the nose, and the darkened out spot is just basically the nostril that they filled in. And then they would erase the other nostril. So then you would get this. So that's where that nose comes from. But the other... oh yeah, I erased it. So the art style I developed, I really like this nostril thingy. I don't know why, I just like drawing it. So I draw this type of nose, and then I keep this in. Because I just like drawing that nose. That's my way to go. So yeah, it comes down to understanding the way people draw, why they draw it the way they do, and it's mostly just to cut time. If it's within the industry, it's production cost, and most of the time it's because I draw something because I like to draw it. This is the way I draw it. It's fun to draw, and that's basically what it comes down to. And a lot of other I actually like to explore Western comics also a lot, because with anime it feels a lot of a copy paste, and I don't condemn the art style, it just say a lot of them are the same. So what are you doing, man? Anyway, yeah, a lot of them are the same. I like to go check out Western comics because there's a lot of variety in those, especially with more seasoned artists than older ones, like Hellboy, for example. They really like to exaggerate his jawbone. So what they would do is they would just basically draw it kind of like this. This is now the jawbone. Also, what I kind of like is when I earlier talked about the shadows, the different types of shadows, and the hard shadows, the soft shadows. Any types of shadows, they would just fill out black. How did they draw the eyes? I forgot. It's also something kind of like this, and him having this type of nose and mouth with a goatee, something. I don't know. But I don't know how they drew him. I forgot. I just know I have half circle eyes, kind of like pointy down nose, and this kind of very sharp jawline. So yeah, a lot of those are interesting to look at. A lot of the characters on Pinterest are interesting to look at for me. I don't like... You can basically spot the AI slop from a mile away. It's not very creative. It falls more into the realistic style. Very stylized, realistic stuff. Usually with a cat or something with it. Girl with a cat. But yeah, I would implore you to go read some comics. Go look at other people's art and just explore other stuff for yourself, and maybe try to develop your own art style. For me, I've been drawing since I was a kid, and I only recently started developing art styles. So it is going to take a while unless you purposefully go practice it and study anatomy and facial features and developing it in a way that you like to draw it, and cutting away certain pieces, but in a way so that it still conveys the image of, oh, this is actually a nose, or oh, this is actually a hand, or whatnot. Actually, also, this is way out of conversation now. It's again going back to conversation costs. This is the same reason they draw cartoons, characters with 3 fingers. 3 fingers and not 4. Is because it took too long to draw 4 fingers. I think it happened in Disney first. Disney first did this, and then other people started doing this. But yeah, coming back to what I was saying, just this stream is recorded. It's going to be posted on E.I.E Crew. I mainly did this for an intern, but for anybody else, this can be helpful to you if you're a starting artist. I didn't really go into too much depth with everything, but in the stuff that I did go in depth with, I hope it helped you. And with that, I am going to say goodbye to everyone. It is free. It's that time of the day. So I'll greet you. And I hope to see you, I think, tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think we start at 11. So, I'll see you then, and good